welcome to TUSP Conversation. It's a platform that brings perspectives from leading experts across diverse fields on the ideas that are shaping our world, especially today. It's brought to you by the Outstanding Speakers Bureau. It's a service which works with hundreds of inspiring minds from across the globe, and they deliver experiential knowledge and cutting-edge insights for businesses. Grooming young leaders to be future ready. That is the topic which we're going to discuss today, and we have two wonderful guests with us. I'll give you a brief introduction, but once you hear them, you would realize that their understanding of business and working with people, because business is all about relationships and people. Where do we fit in it, and how do we manage people and work with them? So our first guest is Dr. A. Chaturvedi. He's a professor and director at Birla Institute of Management Technology. Also, a lot of you know them as it's called BIMTech. It's in Greater Noida. He's an alternate president of Education of Promotion Society for India as EPSI. He has more than 42 years of experience in teaching, research, and academic administration. Remember the word 42 years. So his insights will be something out of the world. He has been director at All India Council for Technical Education. Being a renowned management educationist, he has been deeply involved with national bodies like AIMA, NHRDN, AIMS, and the Indian Management Conclave, which is the AMC organized by MBAUniverse.com. Our other guest is Payal Nanjiani. She's a globally acclaimed leadership expert and speaker, world-renowned executive coach, and founder of Success is Within Leadership. Payal has risen to global prominence by delivering high-energy leadership wisdom, which shows people that success in the corporate and the business world can be achieved with both speed, serenity, regardless of their title, circumstances, or economy. On that note, Dr. Chaturvedi and Payal, thank you very much for taking out the time and being on TOSP Conversations. And for the people who have joined in, a warm welcome to all of you. So our topic is self-explanatory. People want to understand your thoughts on it, that in this diverse world where you want to become somebody, but there are few skills, soft skills, important skills which we require to be at the top of the game and without rubbing people off in the wrong way. Your thoughts on it? You may start, sir. You're live, so people can see and hear you.
Should I start?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Thank you, Danis. Thank you, TUSB Conversations, for providing me this opportunity. I am very delighted to be the co-panelist with Ms. Payal Nanjiani, who is a leadership coach from US, although working in India also. So I'm very happy. I suppose that most of the people who are viewing this program are of young generation, and the topic is also very interesting, grooming the next generation leaders. I have my own experience as told by you that I have been in education for last 44 years. I have devoted 40 years in teaching, research, and administration, but 4 years I have worked with the government of India also in the Ministry of Education. I have been privileged to teach thousands of students, both at my first workplace, that is Raja Balwant Singh College, Agra, and which has been a more than 100 years old A category college, having more than 15,000 students. I started my career in 1976. Here at BIMTech Greater Noida, I have been working since 1999. I have completed more than 20 years, and I will speak on the basis of my more than 44 years experience that for any society, grooming the next generation leaders is very important task. Here I want to make it clear that leaders are not only needed in politics, in society, leaders are needed everywhere. And corporate sector cannot survive without leaders and continuous pipeline of new leaders, young leaders. I would like to say that the first experiment in India, I have studied, I have done some researches also of grooming thousands of leaders to lead the country was initiated by none other than Mahatma Gandhi. He picked up young people across the country, trained them, groomed them, and training was many times under the imprisonment. And when country became independent, there was no crisis when British civil servants left the country, and it was managed very well by the young people, groomed, nurtured by leaders like Mahatma Gandhi and Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, etc. So India has a great legacy. And in business education, leadership is a subject which is being taught for long. And B schools are the leadership laboratories around the world. All over the world, there are more than 15,000 B schools. In India, its number, B schools number is around 2,000 plus. And every year, 1 million students join. Not only the independent standalone B schools are offering MBA courses, but in almost all universities, there are around 1,000 universities in our country. Most of the universities are offering MBA courses. So I would like to say that B schools are a factory for producing leaders, or I can say B schools are leadership laboratories. And there should be no illusion that many times people think that B schools are meant only for granting the jobs or running a placement exchange. Placement is important activity, but I think more than the placement or providing decent career in lives of the young people, these schools are also leadership laboratories where young people are groomed, nurtured, trained to take their future leadership roles. Right now, the post-COVID-19 situation, there is a churning happening at all levels in the society, in all countries. So these schools are also having introspection that what kind of leadership will be required in the future. The last 6-8 months have changed the whole perspective. There is a big paradigm shift. Society has faced an unprecedented crisis which has never been of this proportion in last 100 years. So what will be the purpose of business in future? The purpose of business so far, mostly it has been said that purpose of business is maximization of profit, but the COVID-19 has forced us to shift from the purpose of business being only maximization of profit to purpose of business should be in future serving the interest of multi-stakeholders, community, society, customers, employees, regulators, media, everybody. How we schools are training leaders for their future roles. Here I would like to quote first from my own B schools, BIMTech. It is not merely churning out lectures in the classroom, because experiential learning has replaced the traditional method of classroom teaching, delivering lectures. Young generation learn little from the traditional method of churning out lectures. So few years back, we have started an experiential program called LEAD, which is leadership, aptitude, and development, leadership aptitude and experience development. This is a 7 credit course which runs almost for 15 months. So there are no classes in this course. Students, when they join, there is an online assessment by psychometric tools, what kind of leadership capabilities they have. Then when the result is given, students are given feedback by the teachers. Then of course, they are assessed in teams. All students study management courses in teams. They are assessed for their extracurricular activities, co-curricular activities, academic activities, and it goes on for next 4 trimester, which means 15 months. So this lead course is providing experiential learning to the students, that how by joining different activities, academic, extracurricular, co-curricular, everything is assessed. If they are playing volleyball, they are assessed. If they are participating in a drama, they are assessed. If they are organizing a music festival, the assessment is done. Everybody has to undergo this process. So LEAD is an experiential course at BIMTech. Similarly, all leading B schools, they are using experiential learning. I would like to quote another B school, SP Jain Institute of Management Research, Mumbai, which is providing experiential learning by sending students in the Dharavi slums and asking them to teach the children of the people living, poor people living in Dharavi slums, and they keep a diary, and for 3-4 months they do it and they submit a report. So this is another method which has been adopted by one of the B schools. So all leading B schools, IIMs and private B schools, they are using different methods to groom future business leaders. Another question can be that how B schools work with companies to contextualize the learning for leadership. I think industry is the main recruiter, although around the world governments and NGOs are also recruiting MBAs, but in India mostly the corporates, particularly private sector company, recruit. So here every B school has to invite the industry leaders on various occasions, and particularly getting their opinion about the course curriculum. And our institute is having an academic advisory committee which meets every year, and the industry leaders come, they give their opinion about the curriculum which is sent to them in advance.
Right. So on that,
so yeah, I would like to say the B schools are the big leadership laboratory in India. Around 1 million people are joining, and I cannot say that all B schools are doing justice, but good B schools, quality institutions, they are definitely providing the right kind of leadership training to the youth of our country. I would like to conclude that last 10 years we have seen drastic changes in society, technology, culture, politics. Everything has changed, and further within next 1 or 2 years, when the global society will be overcoming the impact of COVID, there will be a different kind of scenario. So here I would like to conclude by saying that the youth in our country and around the world, they are restless because they are not very confident about their future, because there is a lot of uncertainty, a lot of hardship, inequality is growing, and job opportunities are shrinking. And this is caused by not only by COVID, but also because of a lot of other things like reversal of globalization. So leadership training is required to give them hope, and this training can be provided higher education institutions, B schools, and also by the society leaders. Right. Here I conclude, and over to Danish.
Right. Thank you, sir. Dr. Chaturvedi, thank you very much on that. And Payal, so Dr. Chaturvedi mentioned quite a few points, right? It's the overall, the education system, once you come in the picture and then you start working and then you start delivering on it. Your role as a world coach and interaction with business leaders, how do you see it for people who are coming from educational institutes and into the market and start working with people? Your experience, what are your thoughts on it?
Uh, Thank you so much, Danish, and a very good morning to everyone who has joined in here on a Saturday. Those were some very insightful thoughts by Dr. Chaturvedi, and I really was learning a few things from what he's saying. So thanks, Danish, and thanks to the TOSB team for organizing this. When we speak about grooming the leaders, and when you have spoken to me, Danish, about this topic, that this is what TOSB is going to be organizing. Yesterday, while conducting a workshop for a Fortune 500 company in Bangalore, I got a question which I thought would be really great to share it here on this platform where we are all connected. And the question was, Payal, what is the one quality that future leaders and my team must really have to successfully navigate through not just this crisis, but even in the future? So, it reminded me of our topic today at TOSB, and I thought I must, share with you what I shared with them. And I spoke to them about a very real life incidents from my own life that I think connects very well to when we think about leadership, when we think about future leaders, and when we think about, crises and situations that we want to cross out. So this happened in the year. This happened in the year of 2000. I had just relocated to the United States, and I was looking out for jobs at that point of time. And luckily, I found a job in a mid-size advertising company, and I took it up. And I was like, okay, I need to know the culture. I need to, work it out here and see how things are going to be framed up. And I was really happy. I was happy with my job. I was happy with the salary. Everything was going great, except that I had a problem with my boss. Okay, now, not that she wasn't anything good or something. In fact, she was great when it came to content delivering and when it came to speaking with clients and delivering the results. But when it came to people management, she was a boss that you really did not want around you. So anyways, there was constant friction between us. And I waited, because it was a new culture. I said, okay, 6 months, 8 months. After a year, I did what most of us would do. I handed over my resignation letter and I said, okay, now I can probably apply in another place because I have the experience in the country. And surprisingly, my resignation letter was rejected, and the vice president said, we are going to give you another role in an independent role in a department, and the CEO wants to see how you perform there. Great, I took it up. I was happy. Things were going great. I got promoted within a year into my very first leadership role. And I still remember it was the year of 2004, and we were going to break for Thanksgiving holidays. And the CEO of this company, he wanted to have a one-on-one discussion with each of us for 5 minutes. And I was happy because I really wanted to take the opportunity to thank him for what he did for me. So when he came to my desk, I remember my first statement was, thank you so much for helping me to grow and to move ahead in my career. And he looked into my eyes, and at that time, he must have been 60 or 65-year-old. He looked straight in my eyes and he said, Payal, I have not helped you to grow. In fact, you've got yourself stuck. And I was astonished. I looked at him and he continued and he said, and his words still resonate so much with me. He said, undeniably, each of us in our career life, we are going to face problems, pressure, work pressures, conflicts with bosses, teams, working with deadlines, our share of failures, success, everything. It's going to be good, and it's going to be messy for each of us. And each of us are also going to be given 4 options in our career life. When things don't go right, we're going to be given 4 options. So option number 1 is you stay where you are and you just ignore everything and keep moving ahead. Option number 2 is you quit, you go find another job, another boss, everything new. Option number 3 is you stay where you are, you adjust to everyone, but internally you remain very frustrated and angry, and every day you're just pushing yourself to a work that you don't enjoy at all. And he said option number 4 is that you raise yourself to such an extent, you make yourself so powerful that everything around you falls below you. And he said everything will depend on the options you choose. And I think that completely changed my perspective of when I think about leaders. And in fact, to all of the people who have joined us today, I think this is something for each of you to think, that when you are hit by crisis, when things are not going right in your career life, when you're in a messy situation, when you're not able to deal with people around you, which option do you choose out of these 4? Which options do your teams choose? So I learned something really important that day, and what I learned was that the number 1 quality for anyone to be a great leader, whether now or in the future, is that you've got to know how to unlock the forces of your inner leader. We don't have, Danish, today we don't have a skill set gap, especially when I see it here in India. I am in India now since a year because I'm working with a lot of companies here, giving a lot of workshops and keynotes and coaching for them. And I'm observing that we don't have a skill set gap here. Mr. Chaturvedi spoke so much about the youth and how we are having MBAs, we're having resources, everything. What we have today here in India, and of course it's worldwide also from what I am noticing, we have a performance gap. We have a performance gap despite being in an era of information, of the best resources, trainings. Look at the trainings companies are giving today to their people. Despite of this, the performance gap exists and it's increasing. And the performance gap means that people have the expertise, they have the knowledge, yet there is a gap between what they want to do, what they think that they should do and what they want to do, and what they ultimately and finally deliver. There's a huge gap between
Payal, I just want to ask,
yeah.
so when
Sure.
you say this thing, right, there is a gap. What is the hurdle that the person is not able to take that plunge and fill that gap?
It's because the hurdle is not on the outside, Danish, and that's where majority of us in the corporate life, we really go wrong. We usually feel that if we fulfill the employee's demand for trainings and for their benefits, I mean, these are great. We definitely need the skill set, but the obstacle is the employee himself, the person himself or herself, right? What's going on? What are some of the beliefs that they are coming to you with? What are some of their blueprints? What do they think about their job, about what they are delivering? All of that actually poses a big obstacle. And in fact, and I love the question you asked, because since 21 years, Danish, I have been doing these keynotes and workshops with only one aim: to help these organizations and teams fill this performance gap, because it is inside your people, it's not on the outside. So with the question that you asked, I really believe that when organizations are resourced with inspired, not motivated. Okay, it's a very big difference. Motivation comes from outside. Inspiration is what we help people to build from inside. So when your company is resourced with inspired and talented individuals, those are the teams that are going to give their best no matter what, whatever is the crisis.
Right. Dr. Chaturvedi, I would like to ask the same question to you, right? So now Payal is talking of the corporate side, but you are leading educationists. You're telling people that how do you administer and how do you go about it? Now, as young students who are working in your institutes or in the past you've worked with them, how do you make sure that, when they get into the market, that part is taken care of? That hurdle which they have to cross, which Payal just mentioned, what is that training and what is that, or let me put it, that seed which is required, that, once you plant that seed, it will blossom and they will become individuals or as team players, where they will be able to make sure that the team and the entire organization and they themselves are growing together.
I think whenever a young MBA joins his or her recruiter's organization, the basic requirement is that from the very first year they should become productive as leaders. It is not necessary that they will be having position in the top team, but whatever work is assigned to them, they should behave and they should act like a leader. Leader means taking decisions, right decisions at opportune time. So there has been a lot of concern on the part of the industry worldwide that MBAs are not job ready, and companies have to train them and expend spend a lot of money for their training. It takes time. So MBAs are expected now for last, I think, 12 years. There has been a churning across the world that how the MBAs can be made job ready and how they can become productive from the day one when they join the organization which has appointed them. And I think all B schools around the world, they are connecting with them the context of the industry or the recruiting organizations. And that context is created by sending them for summer internship. It may be of 2 months, 3 months or 6 months. And they are also sent for live projects. And now, because of the growing cloud of online education, all the summer internship in a physical format has become challenging. This time it could not happen in most of the B schools. So they have used certain other via media for imparting them the context of the industry. So I think context of the industry is imparted to MBA students by sending them for summer internship in the good companies. They are also sent for doing the live projects, short-term projects. They are sent outside the country under the exchange program with partner institutions. They go different countries, they study there, and they learn from taking the short-term projects. So
Right.
I think this gap expectation of the industry and performance of the fresh students, this gap is being filled up by B schools like us. Still, it is not the 100% zero gap, but definitely it is being reduced year by year.
Right. So, Payal, now that's a good counter to your point, which you pointed out, right? So now, Dr. Chaturvedi is saying that yes, I mean, multiple things are being done for the students, but when they come and you're saying that in the last few years you've seen this, there's something which is stopping them. Is that industry specific, or is it you see that everywhere which is happening?
No, Danish, it's not industry specific at all. It is, in fact, we see that throughout the world. I travel throughout the world, speaking at various corporates and business houses. In fact, what Dr. Chaturvedi said is correct, that universities are training the youth, and when they go for internship, they are filling that gap. So I've been speaking at various universities, whether they are Duke University or NC State. In fact, very recently I have started to partner with universities and MBA colleges here in India, offering 2 or 3 days courses to their university so that they can churn out those types of leaders. What I am noticing here is that overall in the world at large is that our education system, and when I say our education system, I mean it globally, not just here in India. Our education system, we do focus a lot on on what we need to know when it comes to the theory part of it. See, if you look at it, we are in a global business age now. And in fact, I always tell people we are in the 4th industrial revolution, where we've gone completely digital now. So you can imagine the change that has happened in the business environment. Okay, and I see this every day talking with the CEOs of the company. However, if you notice very closely, most of the literature on leadership comes before the dawn of the digital age. Okay, so now you see the gap. We have moved ahead, but the literature on leadership, the literature on how we are coming out of these universities, is before this age. So to prepare people, and whether they are students, whether they are people who have joined the workforce. Oh, I must say, I have had mid-level managers and vice presidents who face the same difficulty of, they reach a certain level in their career, and if you notice, 90% of the organizations, they see a lot of crowd in the mid-level management. There's a lot of crowd there. People are not able to step forward and reach ahead. That's because we do not know how to tap and unlock the inner leadership skills. There is nothing available, not much available on public domains. And the reason I teach about inner leadership is purely because of the experience I've been getting with these top leaders and CEOs, and I've seen the difference that they have in their workplace.
Okay, right. So as I said, that we'll be taking up questions in between. This one, Payal, is for you. This is because of what you mentioned in your point earlier, the question coming from Shreya. She said that in order to bridge the performance gap, what are the life skills that should be part of the B school curriculum? I think both of you can answer this question. Payal, Payal, you may first answer it.
Can you come back with the question?
Right. It says that in order to bridge the performance gap, what are the life skills which should be part of B school curriculum?
Oh yeah, I would name 3 of them. Okay, I'm going to name 3 of them. The number one, I would say, Danish, is getting into one of the imperative qualities, if you can develop that right now from where you are, is the art of being unstoppable, a complete unstoppable leader, where you are beyond your craft. Okay, you are beyond your craft. Okay, I think I have some little network problem. Just give me a second.
Right.
Okay. Let Mr.
Dr. Chaturvedi, I'll ask this question. So if we're talking about there's a performance gap, and what are the skills which are required?
I think.
Right. So how can B schools help in it?
I think B schools, they are doing good in imparting hard skills. Hard skills related to computing, analyzing, and teaching different kinds of subjects which are required for a leader in their future careers. So hard skills, there is no problem. All good B schools are providing good hard skills, and leaders are well equipped to use them. Problem arises when there is a deficit of soft skills. And soft skills means how do you communicate? How do you behave with your peer group? What are your team skills? How quick you are to take decisions swiftly, and whether you are ready to manage the uncertainty. Like these times, there is a lot of uncertainty and leaders are groping in dark. So if you are a good leader, you should know how to.
Dr. Chaturvedi, I would like to ask, because you have more than 40 years of experience, more than that, right? There must be little stories which you would have seen, a few incidents which stand out when you see that, okay, the person is quite capable of performing his duties, but because of lack of communication or he's not able to express himself, the issue comes and then he say that, "Arey bhai, wo kaam nahi kar sakte." Does that happen? Have you seen that? How did you tackle that situation?
2008, there was a global recession, and all B schools around the world were facing problem, including Kellogg's and Harvard, where companies were not coming forward to recruit the students, and there was a serious scarcity of jobs from the corporate sector. In my B school, when we could not place all the students, so and there were sufficient number of students who were crying and who were facing difficulty, and they were coming with a lot of emotional issues that if we do not get a job, what will happen to our future, and we have no option but to do suicide. There was a lot of emotional cry on the part of the students, and I I faced that situation for 4 or 5 months, and one good method was to talking to all those who were unplaced every week on a given day and time. Every week I used to hold a meeting in which we were sharing information for future placements, and we were listening to their suggestions. So first is, when people are aggrieved, when people are crying, when people are under distress, you should connect with them, and you should always available to listen them and to convey your thoughts to them. Secondly, we offer them some temporary solutions, that those who are supposed to pay their loans, etc., we have written to the government and requested that their loan repayment should be postponed. So ultimately, government has listened to our representation, because I am also heading this Education Promotion Society for India. So we could convince the Ministry of Finance that all education loans should be deferred at least by 1 year. Thirdly, we have offered some jobs to some of the students who were in dire states. Financial situation was bad with them, and we have employed them by offering fellowship to do research. So few students opted to do research, and I know that all of them are now doing good in the academic world, and they are teaching at Mumbai or Delhi or Pune, various places. So I think in a crisis like situation, you cannot say we have no option, we have no solution. When people are under distress, you have to give them succor. So This is my story, that whenever students or teachers or employees, they are facing some serious crisis, you should always be with them and give your shoulder to them.
Right. Payal, you're back. So let's start from where you left off about.
So
yes.
I was talking about some of these traits that we could develop. Like I said, one of them is having the ability to be unstoppable, right? Because the new economy, Danish, that we have all stepped into, it really demands this type of a quality. You cannot sit back and say, oh, it's a crisis, or it is a situation. That's number one. Number two, you have to be great at communication. You have to, whether it's face-to-face or digital, and it's very understated. This entire thing of being great at communication is very understated, and you may be really very skilled in your craft, but if you cannot get your message across precisely and in short, quickly, because it's a digital age now, then what's the point, right? So I always believe that you can never over-invest in communication. So your brain and your mouth have to sync. You can't go faster, you can't go slower. And number three, I would say, is safety. We really want to churn out more and more leaders, whether from the universities or in the workforce. See, we are in a business environment today where there is more uncertainty and more fear than ever before. So if your people are not going to feel safe, now when I say safe, I don't mean give them some job security or something. I mean, how safe are they to show that they are vulnerable? How safe do they feel in sharing their concerns, in sharing their ideas? So I think these three things are something that we must work on these days to churn out more better leaders.
Right. So Dr. Chaturvedi, after listening to Payal, just one thought which came to my mind is that if you look at in the last decade, so students who were passing out 10 years back, and now the students who are passing in 2019, 20 and onwards, right, and going forward, the difference in terms of teaching and making sure that they are equipped enough to deal with the globalized world which we live in, and specifically, is it sustainable? Can they sustain?
The question?
Right. So if you
Can
look
you repeat
back,
the question?
Yes,
because
yes.
Your voice was breaking.
Right. So Dr. Chaturvedi, I'm saying that 10 years back, your students who were coming out and entering the market, compare them with today's generation who's coming out and entering the globalized world, right? We have multi-level organizations working in different time zones, but you have to work simultaneously. For a person who's sitting in Bangalore is working with somebody who's sitting in Zurich, right? There is cultural differences, there is time differences, and the way we communicate. Are students equipped enough to handle this thing? Are young leaders equipped enough to handle this thing? And how are B schools helping that?
Okay, so I think with the intensification in globalization, because last 20 years globalization has evolved. So during last 10 years, I have found that along with corporates globalizing their operations, we have also taken cue from them and educated our students that they should be ready to work not only in India, but any part of the world. So we have offered them foreign languages. We have offered them exchange, study exchange opportunities in Europe and worldwide. Thirdly, I have also found that there is a greater realization among the young people that the workplace is not local, it is global.
Right. I forgot to add one more point to it. The geopolitical situation which is happening across the globe, it's a reality. So be it a conflict between America and China or India and neighboring states, right? That also plays a very important role in the business which you're living in, right? And these are realities you can't get away with. One is a manufacturing hub, the other one is a servicing hub. How do you bridge that gap? And people who are working, how do you train them to handle it?
I think I take a cue from the last 8 months of COVID-19 period when we started teaching online and we shifted. Most of our faculty, they were not experienced in using online methods. So we trained them and 100% teaching was happening online. When students initially they were skeptical about the success of online teaching, we told them that look, if you gain this experience of online learning, it will help you later in your life when you work in any company and your team members may not be sitting with you. They may be sitting in many parts of the world and they may be having different time zones, different cultural backgrounds. So it is helping you to learn how to work with the peers or colleagues from different parts of the world. So we have imparted this lesson to them and they have realized it, and now they are open to work in any part of the world. Secondly, the awareness of the students about the technology has also increased. Earlier, they were comfortable only with their laptops and smartphones. Now, of course, many softwares, apps they are using, and they are becoming experienced in those apps and softwares. So I think online shift towards virtual working or online working has increased, and the current batch of students, they are much better than the students who were learning lessons from B schools or universities 10 years back. 10 years back, India was not fully the way it is digitalized now, that most of the people, educated people, are making payments by digital mode, not in cash. Shopping has also revolutionized that people are looking towards e-commerce companies and not going to markets. And India was famous for the festival season and people thronged the markets and markets were flooded with customers and cars and traffic jams. Now everything is happening from home. So this kind of atmosphere is teaching our students that the world is changed, and in future they will have to operate everything from their home, and it is not necessary that they should go to an office, and not only from home, but it will be work from anywhere. Right. So they are ready now, work from anywhere.
Right, Dr. Chaturvedi. Payal, so what do you feel about the effects of digitization and technological innovations which have happened, specifically if you see artificial intelligence, right? Now, that also plays a very important role because there's insecurity that, what are the things which will be left for me? Like, I was trained for a certain way, and now because of AI, I feel that, okay, that part is being taken. I mean, the best example which I feel that long back when we had typewriters, now that's ancient history. There was a leapfrog jump towards the new thing, from landline to mobile phones, right? There was nothing in between over there. It just happened. And the same thing is happening presently in front of our own eyes.
Yeah. So Danish, you have survived and thrived from the typewriter age right to the AI age, right?
Yeah, that's true.
I think you've just answered it. You've answered the question so well. In fact, a couple of years back, I had written an article on this, which was published in the Silicon Valley magazine. We are definitely seeing more digitalization and more automation these days post-COVID now. Of course, there are benefits and there are downsides, but I do see, I really agree to what you say, people feel insecure because I do see a lot of people complaining about loss of jobs because of technology, or people saying, oh, you know what, technology has made me obsolete, and I think people are moving ahead of me, the youngsters are coming, the millennials are coming. I think if each of us practice this cycle that I'm going to talk to you about, we should not be even having any fear of technology or AI or anything, because see, at the end of the day, whether technology advances or wherever we are, at the end of the day, it's going to be the people force. Not the technology is who made the AI. It's we the people who made the AI, right? So if we can survive from the typewriter age and thrive right up till now, I'm sure we can thrive from the AI age until whatever comes in the future. If you follow this cycle, which I say is learn, apply, and unlearn. You have to follow this cycle if you want to be not considered obsolete, if you want to move ahead of fear of technology. You've got to learn the new technology. Gone are the days where you say that, hey, you know what, I've achieved what I had to achieve, and now I don't have to learn anything great. I know everything. I still learn technology from my teenage daughters. Okay, I'm not great at Snapchat. I had no idea about Instagram because I'm not in that era. But these are the people who are born in that era. I was speaking with a CEO yesterday, and he was telling me that it's really difficult for him to understand the way millennials work. But millennials work in a great way. They have a hand in technology. Why? Because they are learning. So if constantly you're learning and you're applying it, and then you unlearn that, okay, now there is something new, I think that cycle will have very positive effect on digitalization and on each of us.
Right, thank you. I think that's wonderfully answered. We've got to learn, right? So it's a question to both of you now. So the startup space in India and how it has created the new crops of entrepreneurs. So this question must be coming up to you all the time, right? So let me start with Dr. Chaturvedi. So B School is there. So a lot of people, students who are passing out, they will be thinking that I don't want to join an organization. I want to be an entrepreneur. Are B schools equipped enough to manage that or give them the skills which they require?
Thank you, Dadish, for raising this question, which is very relevant for educators like me, policymakers also. One thing is very sure that with the advent of robotics, artificial intelligence, other disruptive technologies, which have given birth to Industrial Revolution 4.0, and we are seriously considering to revamp our curriculum in the context of the Industrial Revolution 4.0. So I would like to say that 1991 onwards, there has been liberalization of Indian economy, and the growth has got momentum, and the new breed or new generation of entrepreneurs came up on the horizon of Indian economy. But the startup movement started hardly 10 years back. I do not say that before 2010 there were no startups, but this movement, startup movement, has got momentum 2010 onwards. During last 10 years, a lot of work has happened, and it is not necessary that all startups should succeed. Out of 10, hardly one or two startups succeed. And now the this environment or ecosystem for startup has got some maturity. Government has also announced startup and stand up India policies. In my institute, government has set up Atal Incubation Center, which is providing all kinds of mentoring facilities for the young students, not only from my institute, but from neighboring institute also. So now, in spite of lot of challenges, because Silicon Valley provides lot of comfortable or favorable support system to the company. And here in India, there has been a big problem because of the legacy of command and control economy, and it was very difficult to succeed for a young entrepreneurs. But now it has got a reasonable maturity, around 35 unicorn having turnover of $1 billion or more than that are in India. Their success stories are encouraging others to follow. There are about 55,000 startups in our country. All are at different stages. Within next 10 years, this number will swell to 100,000. So government is encouraging it. Still, there are big challenges. COVID has impacted or dampened the spirit of setting up startups, and even the availability of funding has decreased a little. But overall, out of all over the world, after China, most of the startup developments are taking place in India, and this is an era when young people are thinking to take risk. Every student is not going towards a startup to become an entrepreneur while passing out from engineering college or from an MBA institute like us. But definitely they go to the corporate sector, do job for some years, and then they start their own ventures and they become entrepreneurs. So this is the right development in our economy, in our education system. In middle classes in India, they were devoured by the government jobs, because government jobs used to give them security. For 40 years, you can work in a government company and you will get a pension and you will get all the privileges. But government jobs are very few. Government is not in position to employ millions of people. Hardly few lakhs jobs are created by central government or state governments. So now, and even in private sector, because of the disruptive technology, job opportunities are shrinking, and a number of students coming out from universities and colleges, it is also increasing. So this gap between demand and supply of jobs is widening. So we have no option but to look towards entrepreneurship. Each university or college should have incubation center, and government can create this facility. So far in India, there may be hardly 100 or so incubation centers. We have started in 2017, and we are getting grant from the Niti Aayog. So I think India as a society and economy, next 20 years, this will get momentum, and we have to encourage it. And we have to see that young people are not facing hardships because of adopting this path. So those who are not successful, they should be given requisite support by the society as well as the government, so that they can experiment, set up more companies, new companies, and they become serial entrepreneur. Because many times those who are unicorn entrepreneur, they have failed several times, and after so many failures, they could succeed.
Right. Payal, coming to you now. It's about digitization, the startup culture, the challenges, the security issue, which is that will I be sustainable, right? Will my business be there, or what will happen to it? In this entire thing, how do you feel that young leaders need to thrive, and what are the, like, for example, the framework which you give of you have to stay, quit internal frustrations which you have, then you raise yourself. Is that the same framework which will fit this mindset, or it's a different set of different set of rules which you need to play this game?
Definitely, Dhanish. Yeah, personally, after coming to India, I have been seeing that there is a growth spurt here in the startups. So definitely, that's great. And I see that new entrepreneurs, they are getting into business for a couple of reasons. Number one is there's a lot of passion in people these days that they want to be super successful and they want to earn money. And I think that's really great for our economy, because you want people like this who have that mindset that I want to earn money, who are not shy to be successful and famous and become rich. And that's very great for our economy here. Number two is they want to solve problems. And I love that. They really want to solve problems. They feel, oh, if this is a thing, why not give it a try? Why not go out there and see if we can solve it? And I think that's, again, a great thing. And I also see a little downside of it is, a lot of young entrepreneurs, they want to ape the ideas from the West, which I think we should, it's great to ape things from each other. I see US aping a lot from India in many things, but it's the way you take it. What tweak are you bringing it to fit in your culture? So I think that's one thing we should really focus on. That if I'm getting an idea, how am I tweaking it to fit it in my culture and my economy here, so that it helps the people out here. And when you talk about the framework, yes, I'll tell you something. In my 21 years of being in this industry of coaching and teaching and speaking, I have really seen that most of the businesses, they do not fail because of the economy or the outside problems. They actually fail because of the entrepreneur, him or herself. And it brings me back to, if I tell people there is never a death of a business. Never. There's never a death of a business. Business never fails. It cannot. We as an entrepreneur, you as a leader are failing. So the number one framework, if you really want to see your business thriving, if you want a startup to move ahead and cross the 5-year target, you have to see where is your leadership. I'll tell you, Dhanish, and everyone today who is listening here, nothing in your life, whether it's your business, whether it's your career, whether it's your income, your status, your progress, nothing in your life will ever surpass your leadership. Never. I have never seen it happening. And that's the reason I advocate so much about leadership. I speak so much about leadership. It has nothing to do with your title, with your role, with your status quo, your office, your number of years of experience. It has nothing to do with it. It has everything to do with how you are framing up your inner leader, so that when you grow as a leader, I can almost guarantee you, everything will grow with you.
Right. Okay. So we just have one final question and then we will wrap up. This is a question from Spriha, and this is for both of you. Personally, what is it about millennial mindset that you don't agree with? Payal, would you like to answer that first?
Okay. I knew that was coming up to me. So what is it with the millennial mindset that you don't agree? Well, I'll tell you one thing. I love the millennials. I work a lot with them. So most of the time, I'm very comfortable working around them. The one mindset that I don't agree with them is they are very hesitant in their communication. I'll come back to communication. Very hesitant. So, in the digital world, we have something what is called ghosting. Okay, so basically it's like, okay, you connected with me, we are connected, we are on a project, we are working together, and all of a sudden something triggers, and then there's the ghosting, right? So you don't reply to my emails, you don't reply to the WhatsApp, you don't reply to anything, and you're like, okay, back. Now that's what's going to trouble not only the person who is with you on that project, it's going to help, it's going to it's going to be a major obstacle in your growth. Because if you don't know how to communicate in difficult situations, you don't know how to communicate with people face to face and answer those questions and cross those obstacles. It's going to have an obstacle when you go up the ladder. And this is natural. I've seen it in all millennials. When I talk to my daughter and I say, hey, you know what, you need to talk to this one. She's, no, I'll just text her. Mom, I'll just text him and I think I'll get my work done. Great. We need to learn how to do that. But then you also need to learn, how can you communicate more better? How can you open up and speak your mind out? It's going to help you so much in your career. You have no idea about it. Right. And I think that's the only mindset about the millennials. Otherwise, I just love the way they are focused and they want to just take up things and they're just on the project. I just love that.
Right. Dr. Chaturvedi, your thoughts on it? One mindset which you don't agree with, or you think they can change or tweak it a bit?
I like that they are brighter than generation, but definitely I do not appreciate much. Many of the millennials, they are too much addicted to the use of social media. So every time looking to the phone or checking the Facebook or Instagram, what is happening or who is liking what and counting the like. I think this is too much, and they are not able to concentrate seriously on their core of their life. So this is one thing. Secondly, I know that their soft skills are good, but many times the emotional quotient is not strong. So we have been trained by the culture, by family, by society to face hardships in life. And because they are mostly confined to their generation, I think they are not very well prepared to face the crisis in their future life.
Right. So on that note, I would like to thank both of you and say that millennials who are listening, I know, it's always a learning game. So you keep on, you learn, you unlearn, and then you again learn. That's how you stay on top of your game. But on that note, Dr. Chaturvedi and Payal, thank you very much for taking out the time on a Saturday afternoon. And both of you have a wonderful day ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Danish. Thank you, Dr. Chaturvedi. And everyone today who has joined in, please stay connected. I love to stay connected on social media. And a big thanks to TOSB for bringing this together. It's so worth it.
Thank you, Danish. Thank you, TOSB Conversations. Thank you, Payal, for being the co-panelist with me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.